Welcome to ABC24 This Week. I'm Richard Ransom. Glad you're with us for our Sunday program as we try to give the major stories of the week some context and perspective. Here's what's on our plate for today. Mississippi's abortion case. The Supreme Court hearing arguments this week about Mississippi's anti-abortion law. And for the first time in some 50 years, there's a real possibility Roe v. Wade may be overturned or severely curtailed. Tennessee is ready to follow suit depending on what the justices decide. And politicians everywhere weighing in on what it all means. Face masks and vaccines. A new COVID variant stirs up an old debate about what local institutions can and cannot do when it comes to mandates. And a wise man once said, it's time to step down. Former Shelby County GOP Chairman Lang Wiseman was a strong pro-Memphis voice as Governor Bill Lee's right-hand man, but now he is leaving that role. We will get to all of that after I introduce my panel for you today. ABC24 political analyst Otis Sanford is here, as is Tajuan Stout-Mitchell, political consultant, former Memphis City Councilman. Having trouble with names today, Tajuan. Thanks for bearing with me here. And you're doing good to come on after having some oral work done, dental work done, so we're glad that you are able to make an appearance today and help us out. First of all, before we start this controversial topic, and it has been all of our lifetimes regarding abortion, I want to point out that I invited several people with the Shelby County GOP party to join us as a part of this discussion. Was not able to get anyone to agree for a variety of reasons, but just wanted to let everyone at home know that the effort was made. So let's talk about this Mississippi case, and I'll start with you, Tajuan. The Supreme Court hearing these arguments, and the legal analysts who followed the questions and where the tone of the conversation went seem to feel pretty certain that we're going to see, at the very least, some major changes in Roe v. Wade as to when life is viable or not viable and when a woman can or cannot have an abortion. And I thought it was interesting, a map that Axios put together, which you probably can't see there from home, but just to describe it to you, it shows how far the nearest abortion provider will be if Roe v. Wade was to be basically discontinued, and the other 12 states that are ready to go with similar legislation do the same thing. And the darker areas there are, anyone who lives in that area will have more than 200 miles to drive to get to the nearest clinic. And that's about 29% of the population. Right now, only 1% of the population is more than 200 miles from the nearest clinic. So it gives you an idea of the kind of impact that this could have pretty immediately. What are your thoughts about Mississippi leading the way on this case, and Tennessee, one of those 12 states ready to follow suit?
Well, I think this has been a game plan of the Republican Party for a long time. When you consider that they stole a seat, well, I consider stole a seat from Barack Obama. They delayed another seat. They stacked the debt based on those appointees. And now it's time for those appointees to pay the piper. And it's unfortunate because it's a dark day for women. If you will notice, the polls show that most women prefer a choice to make a decision of their own with their doctors. And I would think that it is also a sign that women are not being heard in America. We're not being heard when it comes to rape kits. We have to beg for them to be tested. We can't make as much as a man and get that legislation passed. We can't get daycare funding. And now we're turning the clock back 50 years, and we can't make decisions about our bodies.
To Tajuan's point, Otis, I did have one of the Republicans I invited tell me off the record that they're concerned that, yes, this has been one of our big issues for decades and decades. If this actually happens, it will suddenly become a Democratic issue for maybe just as long, and will, gather a lot of voters from the Democratic side or pro-choice side to get to the polls.
I don't think that there's any question about that, Richard. There's just so many tentacles around this one issue, and you and Tajuan have touched on a lot of them. I do think that this will be a defining issue for next year's midterm elections, for 2 years after that with the presidential election. It's going to be an issue for state House elections next year in the states that have them. We say all the time, Richard, that elections have consequences. And certainly the 2016 election had I'm talking about the presidential election, had huge consequences here because Donald Trump put 3 members on the Supreme Court. And he made no bones about it that he was going to put justices on the court who would overturn Roe versus Wade. And even though all 3 of them said in their hearings that this was a settled law, it was precedent, the language that they used in the hearing last week, and I'm talking about Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, and to a certain extent Neil Gorsuch, they all indicated that they are looking to gut, if not overturn, Roe versus Wade. So yes, this is going to be a huge fight, if you will, politically. I'll say one other thing here. Congress could enact a law that would make the impact of Roe versus Wade part of federal law, but it has to withstand a filibuster in the Senate. And there are not 60 votes in the Senate to do that unless at least 10 Republicans break the filibuster. So yeah, this is such a huge issue that goes far beyond just 1 abortion or 2 abortions or 3 abortions.
And we can't diminish the passion really on both sides. The anti-abortion side really weighing in and sees this as maybe a political victory, of course, but also a moral victory, and they take it really very seriously. Just to share some of the tweets over the past week as the Supreme Court was hearing this case. First from Governor Bill Lee, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, he said, Roe versus Wade has caused an enormous amount of pain and loss for our country. Today's Supreme Court challenge is a hopeful moment and proof that years of heartfelt prayer and thoughtful public policy have had an impact. Then Governor Tate Reeves, also someone who weighed in on this, is Mississippi governor, and of course it's his state that is bringing this case to the Supreme Court. I am probably public enemy #1 right now in America for the abortion on demand crowd, but my view is I was elected to represent the people of Mississippi, and I can't think of any more important group to represent than unborn children. Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn, every life is precious and protected under the Constitution. I hope the SCOTUS, which Supreme Court of the United States, will uphold that right today in the Dobbs case, #pro-life. And finally, let's hear from Steve Cohen, the Democrat from Memphis, who said 2 of the last times Mississippi asked for an issue to be left to the states were slavery and segregation. Mississippi was wrong then and it's wrong today. We must protect women's right to choose. I don't care what side you're on, Tajuan, it shows the level of emotion on both sides. I think Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves gets the award for making the most political tweet of the group, but what do you make of some of the responses?
Well, I respect their position. I also respect the fact that the majority of women in this country want to be able to choose, make a decision for themselves with their doctors. And I will say this, though. It's hard for me to believe that some of those statements are genuine when we don't want to pay for daycare for babies. We don't want to help mothers who are working to provide that kind of care. We don't want to pay for better education for children. We don't want to pay for the daily needs and for survival for children. It contradicts everything they're saying when we don't want to pay for their food and upkeep and housing and help families sustain life.
Well, you raise an interesting point. Marsha Blackburn says every life is precious. At what point does that stop after the baby is born and needs some help, whether it be, as you mentioned, daycare and some of these issues? And if you're going to say every life is precious, Otis, she's also pro-death penalty.
Exactly. And plus, when we talk about individual freedom here, they are big on individual freedom when it comes to not getting vaccinated or not even wearing a mask. They say we have freedom. Well, that freedom ends when we're talking about a woman's right to choose. I'm really sorry that there is no Republican who agreed to come on and talk about this today. I'm not talking about this from a political standpoint. I'm talking about this from just a social standpoint and an equality standpoint. And all of these Republican elected officials are really talking out of both sides of their mouth. And the fact is, they have gone all in on social issues going forward, whether it's abortion, whether it's critical race theory, whether it's guns. They're not talking about economic issues and trying to help people with kitchen table concerns. They figure that their political success depends on all of these kind of issues.
All right, we're going to have to leave
In
it there.
fact, they have no
Go ahead,
solutions.
Tajuan, you can finish up.
In fact, they have no solutions. They offer nothing but anti. They don't put anything on the table to build the human spirit or families up. They only talk about fear-mongering and hatred, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, to be fair, I know Governor Lee has said that he is very much in favor of funds being spent on counseling services and other things for women who are facing that difficult decision. But nonetheless, your point is made. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll
And
talk
that's that's not all Republicans too. I do know that.
Okay. We're going to talk about COVID. Imagine that, and some developments with that this past week. Right after this.
Injured, NST Strong is the way to go. Call 683-7000.
What should we do?
I'm going to cashnetusa.com. I can apply in minutes, and if approved, we can have the money as soon as the same business day.
Go to cashnetusa.com to apply for the money you need.
Only Wendy's serves a better breakfast with a better biscuit. A hot, buttery treasure loaded with a fresh cracked egg, cheese, and sausage or bacon. And to top it off right now, they're just $1. $1? Now there's no reason to go somewhere else. Choose wisely. Choose Wendy's.
I got something special planned.
I'm finally alone.
The party has arrived.
Let's just hope it ain't like the last time we was all out here together. We're all graduating and going off to different colleges.
Why can't we just live in the now?
Because it feels like I'm losing you.
Call 526-2126.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
You know, since the pandemic started, there may have been one show where we did not talk about the pandemic, and this is not one of them. Some serious COVID developments this week, actually, and it shows how things are really kind of moving into the judicial system, Otis and Tajuan, and everyone's just kind of got their hands behind their back, not knowing really what to do at this point. You have the Tennessee comptroller, the state comptroller, who suspended permits for entities who wanted to keep their mandates, that affecting some very large employers, hospitals, universities. In fact, the U of M lifted its vaccine mandate for employees as a result, and Germantown is trying to decide what to do, its school system there, because it's just keeping the mask mandate for now, because in part it has a couple of students who are plaintiffs in a federal case that had the judges saying those mask mandates need to remain. But now you've had a couple more federal judges who feel what President Biden has done in the way of vaccine mandates is not legal. So this is all sorting itself out. In the meantime, we're all just trying to decide what to do, Otis.
Yeah, I mean, the courts are all over the place here, and it's causing a lot of confusion here, Richard. And you just enumerated a lot of the confusion here. You have judges in Kentucky and Louisiana who said that Joe Biden's vaccine mandate was unconstitutional, and they put an injunction on that. You have judges in Tennessee who said that Bill Lee was wrong to allow parents to opt out of mask mandates. So we just don't know where we are. This is going to have to be resolved at the courts. Now, whether that we have different appellate courts, like Tennessee is the 6th Circuit, Mississippi is the 5th Circuit. It could very well be that the Supreme Court will have to be the ultimate decider on a lot of these issues, and who knows where that's going to stand. It's just a shame that we have made this a political and judicial issue when we're talking about saving lives, especially children. who are just now getting vaccinated. That should not have been the case, but it is the case because a lot of politicians have made this a political issue because they think they can score some political points as a result of it.
And one of the best examples of that, Otis and Tajuan, was the special session of the state legislature that Tennessee held, all of the bills related to COVID-19 in some regard, and now some folks are being very skeptical about that, talking about maybe we need to roll back some of the legislation that was passed because of what's happening in the courts right now, not the least of which a fellow Republican, State Senator Todd Gardenhire, he represents Chattanooga, and he told the Tennessee Lookout, all we could do was charge up a hill and wave a flag and throw some red meat around and then find out, well, we took the wrong hill. So it shows that this is divisive among the GOP as well, especially the GOP considered to be the pro-business party, so to speak, and you have a lot of business owners who really don't like the legislature trying to tell them what to do with their employees and their customers. Tajuan?
Well, I don't know what to say about this either, because it really goes against everything they just said about all life is precious.
Yeah.
If all life is precious, you ought to love your neighbor as yourself and wear your mask. You ought to practice social distance. And some of these things should, and you ought to get a vaccine. And some of these things should be, shouldn't require a law. We should do it because we're good citizens, and we want to be a part of the team to make sure we conquer this pandemic. And at this rate, the pandemic is moving us around like little puppets rather than the society navigating the disease. It's pretty sad. It really is. But I do think we cannot ignore children in classrooms with illnesses that make them vulnerable to this disease, to this virus, and they have a right to be in school. And I'm going to love those children that I don't know like I love myself.
And to the point that you raised, Richard, about what Senator Gardenhire said, he was right on point here. You know, they spent $167,000 for this special session with per diem and other expenses that was totally unnecessary, because now the laws that they passed are pretty much null, because the comptroller says, well, we don't have to give out waivers because of what these courts have done with the Biden vaccine mandate. It was all totally unnecessary. It was all for grandstanding purposes by the Republican Party. And again, I hate to be a broken record here, but Governor Bill Lee has not shown any leadership on any of these things.
No.
He has been driven by these overzealous leaders in the legislature, including Cameron Sexton and McNally, the Senate Speaker, and he goes along with what they decide, and he signed these bills into law. He should have taken a proactive approach early on and said, no, let's not do this, and if you do it, I'm going to veto it. But he won't do that because, again, this is political for all of them, and he's running for re-election next year.
And now, Tajuan, we have this Omicron variant, which the jury's still out on just how transmissible it is, although we believe it to be more than the Delta variant. We don't know how deadly it can be, whether it will make people more sick or less sick than the Delta variant, but nonetheless, still a lot of concern about that. Travel restrictions being issued again, and there's this feeling of, you know, here we go again. How long is this going to continue?
Well, it will continue as long as we are not aware of our actions to be more vigilant in fighting this. I don't say that this is a disease of the majority. This is a disease of the minority who refuse to comply and bring on and keep this going on. So if you want to know how long it's going to last, it's going to last as long as that 30%, 25 to 30% keeps this up.
Well, that's where these new variants creep up, Otis, is always from the unvaccinated population.
No question. And very briefly, this also shows the hypocrisy here, Richard, because you have Republicans who say, we don't need any mandates for masks, we don't need any mandates for vaccines, this is a person's choice, but then they turn around and they blame the Biden administration for not doing more to curtail the vaccine and try to make that a political issue. It's just a sad day when this whole pandemic has become such a political wedge issue, and it's costing lives as a result of it.
All right, we'll leave it there. When we come back, we're going to talk about the retirement, I guess. Someone stepping down from the Governor Lee's administration, Lang Wiseman, a name that Shelby County Republicans know well. We'll talk about that in just a moment.
We will start with the caviar and the scallops with smashed avocado. And for my main course, I'm leaning towards the Wagyu filet, but I'm also curious about the duck.
What are you doing?
Do you hear what she's ordering? I'm transferring some cash from my Advanced Financial Flex loan into my bank account.
Yeah, but will the money be there before you pay for the check?
Oh, sure. Advanced Financial's fast. I can transfer anytime, anywhere. Is she still ordering?
Oh, yeah.
For you?
I love what she's having.
Excellent choices.
After an injury, when you're stressed and your emotions are running high, you may not realize how easy it is for the adjuster to cheat you out of what you need to protect yourself and your family. Once you call me, you're protected. Make that call. Let's get it all. 888, we fight. We mean it. 888, we fight.
Well, he's never held elected office, but he's well known in political circles, Democratic too, but former Shelby County GOP Chairman Lang Wiseman, who was hired to be Governor Lee's right-hand man as soon as he took office, and has served in that role during that time, announcing that he is stepping down to pursue other interests. He hasn't said what exactly. Memphis attorney who, Otis, you know, we worked with him many years on the show, and always a very level-headed guy and very straightforward. And I would say maybe on the more moderate side of certainly very conservative, but not somebody who's going to carry torches anywhere. And yet you wonder what maybe led to this decision.
Well, and you just said it. I'm a very level-headed guy, really reasonable. I think moderate is a good word for it, but an absolute outstanding political strategist. He helped Amy Wiry get elected to the district attorney's office. He served really well as the Shelby County Republican Party chair. I had an interview with him earlier last week. He says that, you know, he had told the governor that he was only going to do about 3 years, so it was time for him to move on. Would not talk about any other specific reasons why he was leaving, just it was time to go. And he doesn't know what his future plans are, but he's going to have a footprint both in Memphis and in Nashville going forward. He's a talented political strategist, so I expect to see him surface somewhere else sometime very soon.
Tajuan, I know you've met Lang, and what is your read on the situation?
Well, I think Memphis has lost, and West Tennessee has lost a valuable partner in the governor's office, because it is no doubt in my mind that he kept West Tennessee and Memphis visible on that table of discussion. But you know, you leave for all kinds of reasons. I have worked for 4 mayors as an appointed official. I've been elected 4 times, I think, yeah, 4 mayors. And sometimes you leave because it's just time to retire and do something else. And you sometimes leave because you have a difference of opinion. about something that is a principal issue of yours. And if that is the case, you do it gracefully and you leave, but you hold your dignity and your principles up high. And if that's the reason, I salute him for that. You can also leave because you just don't want to campaign for this candidate. And that's hard to do, to speak favorably of somebody when you know of all of their shortcomings. So there are a lot of reasons why you leave. If he's not talking about it and exactly why or his next move, I would think he did it for a principled reason. And I respect him for that.
So one thing we know that Lang fought for, we have to be involved in, is the tremendous get this year of the Ford motor plant in West Tennessee at the Memphis, well, it used to be the Memphis mega site, now we've renamed it. But nonetheless, that was easily the biggest accomplishment of the Lee administration, and you know that Lang had a hand in that.
No question about it. As a matter of fact, he talked about that a lot with me when we talked last week. And it was a crowning jewel for him and for the administration. And we all should applaud the Lee administration for doing that. Lang's primary role there was shepherding through the almost $900 million incentive package through the legislature. That shows, again, his political savvy and his ability to get along and negotiate and talk to people in public office. So he gets strong credit for that. And that goes to Tajuan's point about him looking out for things in West Tennessee because he was really passionate when he was talking about that and the notion that it will benefit Shelby County and Memphis. We may not see it right this second, but it will certainly benefit us.
What will be interesting to watch with that Ford megasite, by the way, is will the United Auto Workers have an edge in organizing the workforce there? Your publication, The Memphian, has had several stories on that, and we'll be watching that closely to see what happens. All right, we're going to leave it there. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Make the Yuletide gay. From now on, all troubles will be miles away. And have yourself a merry little
Celebrate the season together with a holiday gift from Pandora Jewelry.
I still think I can sell the car myself. This is going to take all day. And I have big plans. Brunch, bubble bath.
At WeBuyAnyCar.com, selling your vehicle is always fast and fair.
And a nice pedicure.
All done.
Don't trade in or sell by yourself. Go to WeBuyAnyCar.com now for a free online valuation. Get in, get out, get paid.
However you're celebrating, make DBL a part of your holiday cheer.
Erica's dressed like it's Friday. I'm dressed like it's tax returning Monday.
We just gonna have a little bit of joy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. DBL is always all new every day.
It's the ultimate boy band holiday party, and all your favorites are invited. Sing along to all the holiday classics.
This is a boy band holiday.
A very boy band holiday, Monday on ABC.
Always like to hear from you about the show. The email address is rransom@abc24.com, rransom@abc24.com. My thanks to Otis and Tajuan for being here, and my thanks to you at home as well. Please join us next week for ABC24 This Week.